Hey guys, this is Illusion PODFIC, and today we're going to be reading Green Through and Through by another fucking Robin. This is Chapter 11. Jason had seen Barbara's message ping on one of his mini burner phones, but he hadn't replied because he was a little preoccupied, trying to answer that very question for himself. Is the boy dangerous? Jason was dangerous, but Jason was trained before the pit. He was a soldier. Tully and the pit just built on what was already there. But this kid, he isn't a soldier. Doesn't hold himself with that posture of certainty that comes with training, but he could most certainly be a weapon. He's a meta, a pit-mad one, loose in Gotham. He could have been released by someone looking to cause a distraction, or he could have escaped. If it's the former, then the chances are high that he is some sort of experiment or asset. And if he is, it's probably against his own will. No, not probably. Definitely. You don't have to be a detective to see the fear etched in every line of his body. Fear at Jason, fear at his surroundings, and fear at himself. But Jason doesn't think that is the former, for 4 reasons. 1. The boy's clothing. Not only was he wearing a binder, supervillains generally don't tolerate gender expression from their weapons, but he had been wearing minimal clothing. People generally want their assets to blend into their surroundings or cause destruction, which would probably lead to him being distressed in normal clothes or body armor, not underwear. The lack of protection might have made sense if the kid was invulnerable, but he had glass shards poking out of his skin, which disproves that theory. 2. The glass itself. Why would he have glass in his hands and feet if he was set loose? The only explanation would be if he broke a window or a bottle running around Crime Alley. But the glass was thick, too thick for a window pane, unless the window was bulletproof. 3. He was running, and from the pattern of his movement, he was running away, and he wasn't fully cognizant. The trails of footprints had told Jason that he was probably drugged, or at the very least disoriented. Lots of them appeared to have been made by the sides of his feet making contact with the ground, not the soles. The distance between the footsteps also varied drastically, hinting that he hadn't been able to get into the rhythm of running. 4. Most importantly, Jason is alive. If he was released by one of the rogues, he would be dead, or at the very least captured. The boy had plenty of time to kill him and get away, or call his boss, but he didn't. He didn't even reveal Jason's identity when he ripped off his helmet, because his domino mask was still on his face. If he is a runaway, then it would make sense that he was drugged, maybe as a precaution to prevent an escape attempt. It would also explain why he had glass in his hands. It was probably a scientific experiment of some kind, and laboratories have lots of glassware that would need to be extremely thick if it were being used to contain the Lazarus waters. The thought of experimentation using the pit on a child makes Jason nauseous and wrathful and terrified all at once. Jason has to find where he came from. Stop them doing to others what they did to the kid. The path of blood had long since dried and been rubbed away by Gotham's foot traffic, but Jason has other methods of finding information. These totally ethical methods lead him to an unassuming little storefront. Melvin's magical suits. Unassuming for the Narrows, that is. So it's run down, boarded up, and looks to be completely and utterly abandoned. Normal. Well, apart from the fact that the front door is lying on the street, face down in the road, surrounded by splinters of wood and a dozen busted locks. Okay, so not so normal. He stalks inside, gun clenched in his hands. He's expecting a fight or at the very least a security system. But the inside is empty. Like, empty. The walls, floor, and ceiling are all bare of any decoration. It's clearly a front, but there are a couple of things that make the place stand out from the typical rogue or trafficking front. Like the still damp, bloody foot and handprints dotted around the floor, the glass shards everywhere, and the absolutely wrecked remains of the steel blast door. So, definitely a breakout then. The blast door is ripped in half and also has some bloodied hand-shaped indents on its surface, but only 2. The kid must be a fucking Kryptonian, because ripping through a foot-thick steel door in one go while drugged is insane. Jason steps through the hole in the wall, where the steel door used to be, and he ends up in a dark stairwell. Like, outside. There are red handprints smeared on the walls and steps. The kid was clearly desperate to escape whatever lies below. His grip on the guns tighten. As he makes his way down the stairs, he really wishes that the kid didn't destroy his helmet so thoroughly. The old one he's being forced to wear doesn't have any night vision capabilities, and it's really dark in this stairwell. Before he gets to the bottom of the stairwell, the smell of bile and decay and sterility hits him, and he stops. His veins feel like they're full of magma, and his breathing becomes short and erratic. But he knows the signs, recognizes the start of a pit reaction. He forces himself to breathe in and out through his mouth, taking note of his heavy leather jacket and Kevlar vest. He's not in the tatters of his Robin uniform that was light and slippery. He's not in the robes that he wore in the league. Those were stiff and grainy. He's in Gotham, his home. And he has a mission. He holsters his guns and braces himself against the wall, letting it pass, because it will pass. He knows that now. Once the acidic bile in his lungs dissipate, he straightens and continues down the winding steps. He's thankful for his helmet, no matter how simple it is. It will still keep most of the smell out of his face. He finds himself in a lab, which is what he expected to find. However, he was not prepared for giant vats filled with lazarus waters and floating corpses. "Focus," says a little voice in his head. "The field is for details, the cave is for theories, and the man is for emotions." The voice sounded like Bruce, and that makes him want to punch something because god damn it, it's right. Details. All the equipment is still here and blanketed in a thin layer of dust, which means that the people left in a hurry. And they left not too long ago. Chemicals have been left in the middle of mixing, notes abandoned mid-sentence. The bodies in the tubes, they're dead, but they're in the lazarus waters, so that's really weird. Upon closer inspection, Jason notes that the waters in the tubes are slightly off. They have an oily shimmer that he doesn't remember from his time with the league. He creeps over to a desk that is scattered with stacks of paper, looking to find something to validate his theory. Some of them are notes, chicken scratch formulas that Jason takes pictures of, or stuffs in his pocket to be analyzed later. The other papers are more interesting. Files. Files on the people in the tube. Photos of their corpses, where their bodies were found, cause of death, how long they had been exposed to the lazarus waters, or strain 61. Bingo. And what effects it had. Most of them had OD'd in the Narrows or had been victims of a violent crime in the Bowery. They'd been dunked into the waters and it healed any superficial wounds but failed at actually resurrecting anyone. He digs through the stacks to try and find a description that matches the kid, but can't find anything. He commits everything in the room to memory before following the bloody trail into the next. This one is different, only one pod, front and center, surrounded by lab and monitoring equipment. It's smashed open from the inside, and its contents are spilled on the floor. Blood and vomit and damp, shiny lazarus water. This is the source of the trail. There are way less notes and files in this room, which makes it easier to find what he's looking for. Subject 42, strain 61. Sex, female. Age, 13, 14, 15, 16. Height, 5'6", 5'9", 5'10". Weight, NA. Cause of death, inconclusive. Blood work shows signs of radiation poisoning. Time of death, inconclusive. Entry date, 8/20/2013. Withdrawal date, NA. Additional notes, subject's blood is not fully human, though it did not test positive for the metagene. Effects of the pod after 12 hours. Subject 42 responded similarly to the previous subjects. Superficial wounds have healed, though the rate of reaction has accelerated. Effects of the pod after 24 hours. Subject 42 has started emitting low levels of alpha radiation. Effects of the pod after 36 hours. Subject 42 has woken twice, but drowned in the fluids before we were able to extract it. We will continue to monitor its reactions. Effects of the pod after 48 hours. Levels of alpha radiation being emitted from the pod continues to grow, as well as the low levels of beta and gamma radiation detected. We may have to abandon this project if they climb much higher, as it will soon start becoming life-threatening. After that, the sheet is unfilled. What the actual fuck? Jason rereads the sheet. Then he does it again. This makes no fucking sense. Not fully human? Radioactive? The Geiger counter in his helmet hasn't detected any abnormal spikes in radiation. So what's that about? Why were they so inaccurate trying to record his height and age? The date on the sheet is over 2 weeks ago, but the updates after the 48-hour mark are all blank. The report also said that he had drowned twice, in the first 2 days in the waters. He was in there for 6. How many times had that poor kid died before he managed to free himself? His hand reaches up to his mask, covering where his mouth would be. He feels like he's going to be sick. Right then, in the middle of his horrific revelation, the comm in his ear beeps. He shoves down the nausea and forces the green tinge out of his vision and lets out a string of curses. The beep is alerting him that someone is trying to contact him, which can only mean one thing. The boy has been seen somewhere. The only people who have access to his line are Dick and Babs, and they only use it for emergencies or when on patrol. And it's daytime, which means it's an emergency, and that damn kid is what they're all focusing on right now. He opens up the file, tucking it away, and opens the line. What is it? Hi, Oracle, how are you? Oh, I'm doing great, thanks for asking. Oh, he doesn't have time for this right now. He needs to know what's going on. Damn, okay. The kid, Peter, he's at the library. I thought you might want to tail him, see what he gets up to. His breath catches. Yeah, think so. No problem, Hood. The line clicks off. He hadn't meant to be so short with Babs, but this place, the smell, the bodies, the file, all of it stacks on top of each other and it makes it hard to think. It's better once it gets outside, gets up high. Roofs are nice and far away from everything. Fighting happens in dark alleys, warehouses, and underground, but not on roofs. Roofs are for him. For him to jump across, grapple over. They were always a part of the magic that came with Robin. So he runs and grapples in the warning lights of evening towards the library, towards the kid. Someone is following Peter, and they aren't being very subtle about it. As soon as he said goodbye to Miss Barbara and left the library, they were behind him watching. He can hear their footfalls on the roof above him. It irks him that he can't just turn around and yell at them to go away. But no regular person would be able to sense them, so he keeps walking. He decides somewhere along the way to turn it into a game. If he's going to be followed, he might as well make it fun. So he walks a twisting path through the maze like Gotham streets, leading his pursuer on aimless loops and turns, hoping they'll get bored and leave him alone. It's not that Peter doesn't know how to lose a tail, he does. Wade and Mr. Castle had insisted on teaching him, but Peter doesn't have anywhere to be, and it's quite entertaining to hear the exasperated curses and pants of his follower as he turns down the same street for the 4th time. Stocky McStalkerface, as Peter has so eloquently dubbed him, has started to lag behind and is trying to run as quietly as possible, fully clad in leather, with like 6 guns minimum strapped to him. The effort is futile and hilarious. Okay, so Peter may or may not be using some of his enhanced speed to screw with Mr. McStalkface and make this game extra amusing. Is that a smart choice? No. But is it super fun? Absolutely. He has to fight against the grin tugging on his lips when he appears on the same street he was on 2 minutes ago. He hears an exasperated, "Oh, for fuck's sake." A snort bubbles up from his chest. He can't help it. His hands are up around his mouth, chin tucking into his chest, trying to contain the spontaneous laughter. It's just so ridiculous. The curse and annoyance pushed through a mechanical voice changer that makes him sound like an edgy Dalek. He doesn't hear the sound of the man jumping down from his perch over his battle for breath. What's so funny, kid? That makes everything so much funnier. Tears prick at his eyes and he can't breathe. But for once it feels like a weight lifted. Instead of an extra burden on his back, he doubles over, trying in vain to stifle the giggles. The man sounds so utterly done. He's attempting to keep up the charade. But Peter knew that he was being followed. The man knew that he knew. And Peter knows that he knew that he knew. That makes no sense. He devolves further into his laughter. The man just stands there the whole time, armored head cocking slightly to the side. Eventually, the giggles quiet and Peter's able to straighten himself back out again. He takes several deep breaths, trying to clear the humor out of his system. Oh my gosh, I haven't laughed like that in a while. Stocky, no, redhead. Peter recognizes him from his earlier search on the interweb. Ha, get it? Web. Studies him, but Peter, ever the annoyance, just raises an eyebrow and stares right back, daring the vigilante to make the first move, relishing in the slightly taken aback quickening of his heart. Peter knows that he's playing with fire here, but his spidey sense tells him that the Red Hood's tense posture is more ready, anxious, protective, rather than ready to murder. They spent a beat just looking at each other before Hood decides to bite the bullet and surrender his dignity to a despicably well-camouflaged little shit, as Wade had taken to calling him whenever Peter decided to be particularly petty. "How did you know I was following you? Whatever could you be talking about?" he asks, face contorting into an exaggerated confusion. Hand dragged over his heart in mock offense, he can feel Redhead's dead-eyed stare through his helmet. This kid's a menace. I respect it. Thank you, random voice. Peter does try. However, it is painfully awkward to stand here, staring at the vigilante, so he racks his brain for an excuse to leave. He pretends like he's just been struck by the memory and sticks out his wrist, looking at a non-existent watch. Oh my, look at the time. I have to go. See you around, Mr. Redhead. He throws a sloppy 2-fingered salute at the vigilante who makes a confused, strangled sort of sound in his throat. But Peter is already 2 streets away and can't hear it over the sound of his laughter echoing against the pavement. Alright guys, and that is the end of chapter 11 of Green Through and Through by another fucking Robin. I hope you guys liked it, and I'll see you next chapter.